Financial Group. Welcome and thank you for being here, David.
A pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So you're a financial guy. Tell us about how all that stuff works, because there are a lot of other people that are in business and finances are just part of it. Other people are into the preservation of money and the growing and taking care of money. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we definitely do things differently. And I look back at this past year when we had the fastest bear market because of the pandemic, and then like the fastest bull market. And so we've worked with money managers who will get out of the market, which supposedly you cannot do because you have to make two decisions, when to get out, when to get back in. But we've got a variety of them. And generally there are signals when to get out. It's like if you buy a stock, you can put a stop loss on it. And we do that with whole portfolios. So we have had an extraordinary year. One of our money managers is a top 1%. And that's partly because they got out at the beginning of the pandemic, which they don't normally do. They are fairly careful about not getting out. And then they got right back in April. And the interesting thing back then was it still looked like the end of the world. And we could see, and some of the other money managers, that the Fed was actually buying corporate bonds for the first time, corporate bonds, all of the government backstopping the pandemic, the payroll protection program, the extended unemployment benefits, the stimulus checks. There were just so much going on, and then the market reacted positively. So even though we thought that it was going to be terrible for the stock market, all of these unemployment numbers, all the shutdowns, then the market seemed to go exactly the opposite of all the economy.
So let's talk about the average guy. That do they buy themselves, buy stocks by themselves, or is most of that through professional managers?
There are a lot of people who are do-it-yourselfers, and there are some people who can do pretty well. And I actually will encourage people to use like a discount broker. I have one myself. So you can definitely do certain things, but that's a good question. I will ask it myself of somebody. Like, okay, are you picking your own stocks? Or if they show me their portfolio, I say, how did you get these stocks? And I see disasters and I see success stories. So it depends on the person. I see things that have gone absolutely worthless. I don't know what people were doing. They heard something, that typical hot stock tip. And then I've had other people who just, got in like, major stock early and did really well.
So for the amateur in that, myself, I get a friend calls, Michael, you ought to do this stock and this, and this. And I say, you know what? I only invest what I can afford to lose.
That's it.
All right. And sure enough, within about 3 weeks, it went up and then plummeted. All right. So, and I lost whatever it was. Fortunately, all right, I can't stand to lose a lot of money. All right. So it was a great lesson. All right. That you need to hire a professional to do that. If you think you're great, super, go for it. And then you reap the rewards and pay the consequences.
That's an interesting story, because we will have people call us about cannabis stocks or Bitcoin or the pharmaceutical stocks before we had a vaccine. And so they were asking specific questions, and we do have all sorts of research software and it's updated daily. So I would have people ask me about a particular company, maybe trading $80 a share, and the analysis, it's worth $3 a share. And that's not unusual to see this incredible discrepancy for what the company really is worth. It's like people are betting. It's very speculative. And so I tell people, if you're willing to take that kind of a risk, you can go ahead and do it. Like you said, Las Vegas money, and you have to be willing to lose it all. So that's not exactly investing though. So I tell people, this is, you're having fun. It's like you're trying to buy a lottery ticket here. So, okay, just, buy it. We can park it. We can see what happens. I had somebody do that with one speculative stock. And again, it went down over 50%. And that can happen with almost anything. When oil tanked, I had one of my most, and I know who these people are if they're my clients asking, and if this is within their normal risk tolerance. And I've had people, this was so interesting during the start of the pandemic, I had a ton of people who were losing their jobs or were thinking about retiring early. And then I had other people who were trying to take advantage of the market and trying to see what to buy, what to do with all of this money. And so I see people who are really conservative normally doing things that I consider outside of their risk tolerance and very aggressive. That's part of our job, is to give that feedback.
And to help people stay and be a bouncing board for them.
Yep.
So I understand that in a couple of days there's going to be on March 18th. There's a special show that's going on. Tell us about that.
Yes, we have Ben Bernanke, who the former chair of the Fed. I've heard him speak before, and he's very interesting, especially once some of these leaders are out of office. They tend to be a lot more candid, which is kind of interesting. Our broker-dealer, Cetera Advisors, is hosting Ben Bernanke, and then we're going to be doing a little after show. So I have found it just an extraordinary, interesting time from when he started at the Great Recession, 2007, 2008, and all of the things that were done to get us out of it. And we never thought we would see all of these bank failures and how the system worked and nearly collapsed. And so it's interesting to get some of those stories. And even now, what the Fed has done, and to think we've had some great leaders. I think Jay Powell, the current chair of the Fed, has done a great job. And we had Janet Yellen there, and now she's Secretary of Treasury. So there's a lot of experience there. So
can somebody go to your website and sign up? You can have a webinar afterwards. Is that the
Yes.
idea? And what's your website address?
It's Treece Financial. That's T as in Tom, REECE, financial.com. Or David Treece. You can just Google us. And we have a great website. I can say that because I'm not responsible for it. We have staff who put it together. And so there are tons of things there, guides, videos, educational things. So a lot of good material for people to use.
And we have Tommy producing the show. Tommy, can we get his web address up there? Mm-hmm. All right, so Tommy's going to put it up there. So I had a friend who about I guess March, April, all right, he lost a lot of money, and he was forced to get out of the market. And the stocks plural, that he wound up having to sell to cover his note, right, now worth about double what he actually had in it. So timing and the ability to withstand it has a lot to do with that.
It absolutely does, and it depends on everybody's time frames and risk tolerance and maybe liquidity needs. There's a lot to this. For example, if you've got a longer period of time, maybe it's fine that it goes down and you can wait it out. But if you're already in retirement, your time frame is going to be a lot different, and it's going to be incredibly stressful. Also, if you're taking withdrawals from your account to live on because you're in retirement, there is something called sequence of returns risk, and that is where you're taking money and maybe selling things in a down market. That will mathematically shorten the lifespan of a portfolio. We absolutely plan for that. We will set aside a cash bucket, so we will produce the cash out of that, invest the rest for growth, and then also for risk control, and then replace the cash bucket. That takes that sequence of returns risk off the table. But that's one of the reasons that retirees will fail and risk running out of money, is that they are actually overly aggressively invested. They are in a down market, they're still taking money to live on, and that really hurts the lifespan of a portfolio.
And speaking of extra money that people really weren't planning on, I see the insurance companies, homeowners insurance companies, really clamping down. They want inspections before, 2 inspections I've seen personally, right? And they're also excluding a lot of roofs that
Yes.
Before they would cover or wink to be able to do that. The roofing companies, of course, are having a field day because everybody's getting notification your roof, its lifespan is very short. So seniors that hadn't really planned on that, all of a sudden, there's this extra money. I know a local condominium association, the special assessment is going to be the special assessment, which is going to almost match the monthly maintenance fee. And that special assessment is for 2 years. The reality was it's only been out of a special assessment era for a year. And prior to the year, there was another one, all right? And so all of a sudden, the retirees are looking at another $300, $400, $500, $600, $700 a month that they maybe weren't counting on.
Yeah, we plan for this, and there's no question about it that a lot of the expenses in Miami for real estate have gone up. It's a big topic of discussion. That is the rising insurance costs, for hurricane insurance, just the expenses overall, and then certainly there is that issue of the any kind of an assessment. So we kind of plan for that and put in a little wiggle room. We do full-blown financial plans, and so we will look at how realistic some of the spending assumptions are. I have to say this: people might not want to hear this, but We have a lot of people who, when they get to retirement, are looking to leave Miami. Maybe they'll go to cheaper parts of Florida or Georgia, the Carolinas, or even abroad. And part of it are the expenses here. And that certainly includes,
Yes.
the risk of assessments. I had one person who was in a very expensive luxury condo building, and this was to put in hurricane windows. This was many years ago, but it was $100,000 per unit. That can be, quite a lot of money for,
Yes.
For a middle-class person. So,
by the way, we have your website up on the screen there. I want to make sure we got it right.
yes,
TreeceFinancialGroup.com.
yes.
Okay. So tell us again about what Ben Bernanke is going to be speaking about.
I think it's basically a question and answer. So I think he's going to talk about his experience there during the Great Recession. And when I've heard him speak before, I think he'll talk also about the independence of the Fed and how important that is. We have seen that there gets to be political pressure for the Fed to do things to stimulate the economy. And that's partly because the politicians want to get reelected. And that's not necessarily the job of the Fed. Their job is to really do what's in the best interest in the long run for the economy. And they're looking at things like maybe in the past controlling inflation. They're saying right now that they will let inflation even go beyond the 2% target if necessary, because just to get the economy going. So they're not going to try to increase interest rates just to control inflation unless inflation really becomes a problem. There's been some concern about that simply because of all of the spending, the stimulus, and a lot of cash on the sidelines. We think there's about 1.6 trillion of consumer cash on the sideline. My clients, it's funny to listen to them. They said, every trip they've had has been canceled, everything they've wanted to do. One of my clients said he's going to go up to Broadway and see every show there is once it's opened. And the weddings, the special events, the graduations. So we can see as we get into summer, as we get more vaccinations, the stimulus effect, there may be an infrastructure bill, and then all of the cash on the sidelines. There's a lot of reason to believe there's going to be money coming into the economy.
Okay, so let's look at a guy or a gal woman that's 35 years old, working for somebody else. Let's say they're making $75,000 to $100,000 a year. All right, they're living in Miami. How much money do they need to put aside? So if they're lucky enough to reach age 70, all right, 30 some odd years down the road, that they were going to be able to live a lifestyle that would be okay for them.
Yeah, there's so much in that, and it's going to vary from person to person. But we always want you to save 10% of your salary. But the interesting thing is, we try to project longevity. We plan for a long life. And there's this movement called financial independence, retire early, FIRE. And a lot of us in the financial planning don't like it because you can't necessarily live like a pauper and try to retire at 40 or 45 and then go live on some shack on the beach in some other place. So everybody's different. We really want people to project to have lower expenses in retirement, to have a mortgage paid off, consider healthcare expenses, consider their living expenses where they want to be. And we have several software programs, and we can even make them available to clients. But we will put all of that information in.
So you put in all this stuff, and then they got a little minions, and they're working it out, and you're going to come out with a report. This is how old you are. This is what you're going to need over here based upon where you are today and your lifestyle today. This is how much you're going to need in order to live the way that you'd like to.
And that's what people need to see, because most people have no idea. It's like, am I saving enough? What if this happens, that happens? A lot of younger people are very skeptical about Social Security. Will it be there when I retire? Anybody born 1960 or later, their full retirement age is 67. And what that means is they have to wait until that age to get 100% of their benefits. They could retire early. These are separate decisions. But and if they take it as early as 62, it's going to be greatly discounted, and it's discounted forever. And plus, there's a cost of living adjustment for Social Security. So if you take it earlier, your cost of living adjustment is going to be on a lower base forever. So people are living longer. My oldest client just turned 100. That would have been probably 3 weekends ago. I've got another client who's 97. I have clients who are into their late 80s, and you look at them and you think there's no way.
So you have some clients that are older, and you work with them when they're children, or maybe their grandchildren.
Yes.
Right? Because their grandchildren are 50-ish type of approach. So what do you do when you wind up having a client whose heirs have died or are gone? And you have a bunch, I suppose, it sounds like.
This is one of our strongest areas, and I'm surprised other financial advisors just haven't experienced this like we have. We have a lot of people come to us when somebody has passed away, or of course, our clients are older and they pass away, and that's really where we step in. We will make sure that everything is done. We really try to have our clients be prepared beforehand. We have a program, it's called Everplans. In fact, if people reach out to us, I can invite them for free to join this program. It's a way that you can put all of your legal documents on an online dashboard. There's super strong security, but you leave a trail of breadcrumbs for those who were left behind, and you can even nominate, as they call them, deputies. That is, people who will receive this information, because we want to make sure that the right information gets to the right people at the right time so that they know what to do. I tell my stories about dealing with clients who've passed away. I have one client who agreed to be the personal representative of somebody, of a relative, and then that person passed away, and he calls me up and he says, well, what do I do now? And personal representative is executor of, and I said, well, you have to take the will to court, and a judge has to review it and make sure everything was executed properly, that you've got, 2 witnesses and the notary, and that you are eligible in Florida. You have to be a resident. The executor has to be a resident of Florida or a blood relative. That'll blow up a will really quickly. You've got a lot of people who name their best friend up in New York, and they're not a blood relative. They're not a Florida resident. They are not eligible. So we try to educate people to be prepared, and then we help them with the whole process, including transferring accounts, getting death certificates, and anything else that needs to be done.
So how about the guy that he's disabled, all right? And he's considered disabled. I think that's a term by the courts. And he can't take care of himself, but still alive.
Yes.
All right.
Oof. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. Are you talking about guardianship?
Yes. I had a personal experience with that. It was 8 years of grief. 8 years.
Never do it. Never, ever do it.
8 years of total grief.
It's a nightmare. I'm going to say something controversial.
Go ahead.
All across the country, there are mafias, guardianship mafias, and Miami is no different. I'm not going to say we're any better or any worse.
There's a movie, by the way. There was a movie like that.
There's
recently.
There's one out that's super popular. People are talking about it. There is another documentary. It takes place in Las Vegas, and a lot of the people there went to jail. And this involves not just guardians, but the judges and the attorneys. And it is rife for abuse.
Is that the documentary?
The documentary, yes. And
I must have seen that one.
Yes, and it is shocking. It's appalling. This is an area that needs a lot of regulatory reform. There are bills in process all over the country. It's been an ongoing problem. I have seen it. I have to say this. I had one client who became deluded and started sending money to crooks in Jamaica. This was a lottery scam, that she had won all of this money. And I got suspicious. I went to her home and I'm interviewing her because she was asking for these large withdrawals. And then she said, I know you're going to talk me out of this, but I've won all of this money and I have to pay the transfer fees and taxes and this and that. I'm like, oh no. And she was alone. Her husband had died. They never had children. And I called the police, I called the FBI, I called Adult Protective Services. They sent out an inspector. I called the Department of Children and Families. They sent out an inspector. I still have all the records. This was the lead story on the local news 2 nights in a row. The reporter was in court. I went to get a guardian for her. This was what was recommended, an emergency temporary guardian. Her family up north was totally supportive. And we did it. We got it done. We always work with third-party custodians. Yes. And so she always has access to her own money. I was not facilitating this at all. And I told her I wouldn't do it. So she's asking for me to do withdrawals. And I said, no, which is our right. We don't have to do it if we suspect fraud. But then she calls the custodian and orders the money. And I could see it going out. And, finally we got the guardianship for her. But the legal fees were through the roof. And we were joking with the family. It's like, well, the money's gone either way, whether it goes to crooks in Jamaica or the attorneys. She's out all of this money. And, I have another sad case, and you see it all the time. So it's to be avoided.
So as people get older and their families either, they're disappearing, or they go away, or they die, that puts the person really vulnerable medically and physically, emotionally, financially. And I was just asking one of the people there, I said, is this a scam? I'm looking at, and I just couldn't figure it out. All right. But I kept checking, and I saw a couple misspellings in it. I said,
yes.
I said, there it is. All right. And somebody else, I'm sure, re-entered their information, and then bingo, that it's gone. So you have ways to help protect
Yes.
Your clients, and people can go to your website. They can go in and they can chat. They can call you or go there and find out information about how they can look down the road, especially after this year of COVID. All right,
wildness. Yes.
And it's been a year, and it looks like that things are going to get brighter. And I think one day they'll be dancing in the streets. I'm not quite sure when that's going to be. So, David, on the 18th, where's this interview taking place? How can somebody get to it?
They have to contact us because it is not open to the public except by invitation from us. So if somebody sends us an email, to info@davidtreece.com, or just go to our website, you can contact us there. We'll send you the link to watch the interview with Ben Bernanke, and also it'll be available for a time after. So I want to follow up on one thing that you said there about the people being victims. One quick thing: if there are people who are listening who are concerned about aging, perhaps aging alone, we have a whole program called the Solo Ager. And I want everybody to know you do not have to worry about a guardianship. You can name even a trust company. We've got one that's approved by our broker dealer. You can name them as a power of attorney or as the executor. You don't even have to have a trust, and they charge hourly. So you don't necessarily even have to be wealthy, but the point is to avoid falling into that situation where somebody else is making decisions for you who might not have your best interest at heart. So I'm going to throw that out.
And again, my personal experience, you mentioned about attorney's fees. Oh yeah, attorney's fees over here, attorney's fees over there, right? And of course, this family member was still alive, just disabled, which is a fortune to take care of them. And all of a sudden you're going, a couple little mistakes along the road, all right? Because a lot of people, I suspect, plan on, if they have a major illness about dying, the reality is you may hang on for a long, long, long time, and your cost of living is gigantic as compared to the person that is somewhat healthy. So how long have you been in the financial arena, David?
Yeah, it's been a lot, like 25 years, more than 25, close to 30 years now. I'm losing track. But it's interesting when I look back on all the things that we've done and the stories I have to tell, just the topics we've touched on. I mean, I have stories about every single one of these things, about people who are disabled, people who are living a long time disabled. One of my clients has Alzheimer's, and she has a long-term care policy that's paid over $500,000. And you do want to try to plan for some of these things. And
but, by the way, when my family member had a stroke back many years ago, that's when I went and got long-term care for my four family members.
That's great.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, it's hard to get, and it's expensive, and they don't want to take you, and there are price increases all the time. So there are still long-term care options available, not using the traditional one where you could go ahead and do it through a life insurance policy or a plain vanilla fixed annuity. And that's really what's taking over the market right now, because the price increases are incredible. They're doubling and tripling.
Make sure your kids are very successful, really successful.
Before you drop a policy, if you have children, tell them, I have this policy and it's becoming expensive. Maybe they will pay for it, because you do not want to be in the position of actually giving the care. You want to hire the caregivers and coordinate the care.
I tried that care, managing it. It was terrible.
It's a nightmare.
Because the anguish and the anger and the frustration, that occurs because of that. And quite frankly, there was a point to where when finally he couldn't walk anymore and was in a wheelchair, I was actually thankful. I'd say it, because then he couldn't fall. All right.
I have all of the stories.
Yes. And I'm sure you have a lot of those. We got 5 minutes left, David. So you've been in the field 25 years, right? Or plus, all right?
Or plus, I think it's plus.
Right? I think it's a lot more than that.
It's like close to 30.
And your office is located in Miami in the North End. And People can go to your website at Treece
TreeceFinancial.com.
financialgroup.com.
Yep.
All right. And then on March 18th, Ben Bernanke, the former Fed chair, right?
Yes.
Is going to be talking. And it's great to listen to educated people that have been in that arena, that have no political pressure around them, that can speak their truth. And we remember in 2008, don't worry, this recession will be over by Christmas. We were only off by 3 Christmases, all right? And so certainly the environment today is a little bit different. And we, community newspapers, we wish you well, all right?
Thank you so much.
And this year, the remainder of this year and next year are going to be great. And
I'm optimistic, yes.
Yes, it's super. Okay.
Michael,
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Yes.
it. And Tommy, thank you very much for the show. Again, this is Live with Miami's Community News, and our guest today is David Treece with Treece Financial Group.